This is my latest project, a Dinky toy number 252, the refuse wagon, or dustcart as we used to call it when I was a lad. I remember dustmen collecting and emptying our metal dustbins into dust carts just like this. This model was produced from 1954 to 1965, and there were many colour combinations of cab, body and shutters. This version has windows, die-cast wheels with tin plate shutters. Some later models had plastic wheels and shutters. The model is in fair condition, but there are issues, so let's go through them first. A previous owner has painted the bonnet and roof blue at some stage. Quite attractive really, but I want to restore to an original scheme. The tipper gear is fitted but not working, and the chassis is bent on one side and the rear tipping door is missing. On the plus side, the chassis is not broken and I should be able to bend it back into shape. Other than that, the bodywork and glazing appear to be undamaged. The wheels, tyres and axles are all good too. In fact, the green paint on the wheels and side wagon shutters are in good condition, so I won't be repainting these. I intend to keep as much original paint as I can on my restorations. Now, I have removed the tilting gear because I wanted to order a replacement as early as possible if it was broken. Luckily, it wasn't. To remove the tipping mechanism, the base plate has to be removed. The base plate on this model is not fixed in place by rivets, but by tabs on the sides of the base plate that pass up through the chassis and are bent over. You really need to raise the wagon body to get at these tabs as they are recessed, but this was not possible with the jammed mechanism. So I used a screwdriver and eased it between the chassis and the base plate to gently lever and lift the tabs. Once they were slightly raised, the screwdriver can be applied directly from the top and the tabs pushed to straighten them out. The base plate is still clipped under small projections behind the front axle, which can easily be removed. And then, with a bit of fiddling, the tipping mechanism can be withdrawn from underneath. With the mechanism removed and the body tipped back, you can see these tabs quite clearly. The tipping mechanism is in two parts, and there is some wear on the gear fitted to the handle. This looked worn, and the mechanism was stuck solid with dirt. The gear was slipping over the crown gear, which would not move. I cleaned it all up with a toothbrush and lighter fluid and applied plenty of WD-40 releasing oil. Luckily, this freed up the winder, and after more cleaning and WD-40, the mechanism started to work smoothly once again. In order to free the gear from the wagon body, I had to bend this tab up. The gears were worn, but it works, and I would rather keep the original gear than fit a replacement. The wheels and axles are easy to remove as they are just held in place by the base plate. I checked the axle lengths, and the back axle is 2 mm longer than the front axle. The wagon body can now be removed. I simply cut off the spade end and pulled out the hinge rod. I can now look at the shutters, which were stiff to operate. Again, this mechanism is secured by a couple of tabs. However, it appears it is also held in place by a rivet, which you can't access without removing the body base plate. Before I did this, I decided to check the fit of the replacement tipper door. This seems to fit pretty well and clips into the base exactly as it should. Now I'm going to remove this base plate. I have the body in a clamp ready for drilling, but these rivets have not got a recessed dimple in them. In fact, they have a raised point that will make it difficult to centre the drill. So I will need to file the points off the tops of the rivets. So I'll do this with a small flat file. I have a 1mm drill fitted in my Dremel, and I need to drill a pilot hole in the flats of each rivet. Using the little pilot hole, I can now drill out the rivets. This rivet also has a pointed top, so taking care not to damage the body, I will file the top flat. I need to straighten the tab a little to release the plate. One final rivet to remove is the one holding in the glazing. Tricky this, as there is restricted access and no room to file down the rivet. So I took the drilling slowly. I definitely didn't want to drill through the cab roof. It took a while, but eventually the glazing came free. So there we have it. After a good hour's work, the strip down is done. Everything needs cleaning and the chassis has to be straightened. The original paint on the shutters and wheels looks good, so I won't be stripping these. The glazing does have a small crack, but I think it will be hidden when fitted in place. The radiator and lights had to be levered off from the front of the body with a screwdriver, which damaged the back of the casting, so it will need gluing back in place later. The chassis has been bent on the winder side, probably due to the weakness of the chassis at this point. I will gently straighten this with pliers. In order not to damage the casting, I have wrapped a pad of masking tape around the jaws. I check frequently as I go, and I manage to correct the chassis. A quick double check on a flat surface showed no wobble. All 4 axle points were touching. This was the only repair needed, and everything has been cleaned in hot soapy water. Before I can strip the paint, I need a match for the original colours. I will mix the orange for the cab and chassis using Mr. Hobby red and yellow acrylic paint. The colour is too warm. I have mixed in too much red, so I'll need to add some more yellow. I do all this by eye. It is probably not 100% accurate, but I'm happy if it looks close enough. Once I'm satisfied with the mix, I will produce a colour tab on Plasticard. For the body, I have some Mr. Hobby Light Aircraft Grey that looks pretty close, so I'll probably use this. Now I can get on with the paint stripping. For this I use the cheap but effective dial stripper from B&Q. I will coat the cab, chassis and body and leave it for at least an hour until it does its job. In the meantime, I will clean up some of the rust, starting with the cab and chassis baseplate. I have had some comments left on this after the Rolls-Royce video. I have decided to stick with the ultrafine wire wool, grade 0000 for the time being, as I do want to remove any loose surface rust. I want to be more aggressive on the bare metal parts, like this frame that holds the working shutter doors. I found it too time consuming to work with the wire wool, so I've set up my Dremel to use some mildly abrasive polishing wheels. This did the job perfectly, so I decided to polish up the radiator casting as well. I was so pleased with the result that I decided to polish the oxidization from the surface of the cab, chassis and wagon body. This would also rid these castings of any paint remaining from the stripping process. Here are the 2 main original castings and the replacement door polished and ready for primer. I'm going to leave the original play-worn patina on the main baseplate to reflect its true age and use. This will be clear lacquer coated to help prevent further rust. I was going to treat the body base plate in the same way, but there was too much paint chipping, etc. that would show and detract from the overall look. In the end, I decided to strip this back to bare metal. This is also now ready for primer. With the metalwork prepared, I turned to the problem of the blue paint on the windscreen glazing. I used the nail buffer for this, side 1 for removing the paint and side 2 for polishing. I know I could use brake fluid, and I probably will in the future. This took me 40 minutes to polish out. These are the smaller components that have been cleaned. They are original, finished, and, except for some lacquering, they are now ready for the final assembly. This is the turning point in the restoration. I am now ready for the priming and painting. But first the important degreasing clean-up of the castings to remove fingerprints, etc. I use methylated spirit or isopropyl alcohol for this. Once done, I only handle the castings while wearing cotton gloves. The main castings and the wagon base plate are sprayed with Halford's white primer. I build up with short bursts and keep rotating the model. I try not to rush the painting process. Although I use acrylics, I leave the colour coats until the next day. The primer has dried overnight and I have now remixed plenty of orange, as I have another restoration in the pipeline that matches this colour. I will now airbrush this colour inside and out. Followed by the wagon body with the light aircraft grey airbrushed inside and out also. I now mix the green for the back door. I have the shutters as a guide for this. I had problems mixing this until I turned to my Liquitex acrylics, where a mix of emerald green and Hansa yellow did the trick. Here too is the finished cab and chassis, compared with the colour tab I painted a couple of days ago. Here you can see the main components in their painted finish. The cab and chassis baseplate has been lacquered, the wagon baseplate has been primed and airbrushed gloss black. Finally I coated the windscreen with Johnson's Clear floor polish. Not available anymore, but I have heard Humbrol Clear or Tamiya X22 Clear work well. There are many other alternatives out there, but you need to Google, especially if you live outside the UK. Johnson's Clear with a K was a self-levelling, hard-wearing acrylic floor polish. I will now let this all dry out for the rest of today. The next morning I have started varnishing. I apply Johnson's Clear with a soft brush. During the course of the day I will apply another coat, maybe more, until I am happy with the finish. Being acrylic, it will dry quickly enough to finish varnishing on the same day. I will apply all the varnish needed on other parts on the same day, even the wheels and tyres if they need it. Then I will leave it for at least until the next day before assembling. As it turned out, it has taken 5 coats of clear to get an acceptable level of gloss. I left the clear coat for 2 hours before finally painting the front bumper with an enamel silver. I used Revell No. 90 for this. There is a chance I might paint the radiator and headlights as well if they do not match the bumper. They did not match, so before going to bed I painted the radiator and headlamps in Revell 90. Finally, the painting and varnishing is complete. I think this is the most satisfying part of the restoration, the final assembly. Everything is now ready. Several parts will need fixing first with 5-minute epoxy. While the glazing and the radiator are drying, I will assemble the shutters, making sure they work smoothly. This proved to be quite a fiddly job. Finally, the tabs on top of the body needed flattening. I did this off camera. I was worried one slip and I could ruin the paintwork. Instead of pushing with the pliers, I angled them up and pressed forwards and down on the tab. Any slip hopefully would drive the pliers up and away from the paintwork. I made sure the shutters would operate smoothly. Fitting the winder was much easier than I thought. There is a slot for the base plate behind the back axle. Insert the rear base plate tab in here first. Then clip the base plate under the lugs behind the front axle. The 3 tabs that project through the chassis floor now need bending flat in their recesses from above. I bent down the tab at the top of the screw. You can fit the body on with the tab bent. You just need to line it up for the slot in the body first. I secured the hinge pin with a couple of drops of super glue. Finally, I fitted the door. I had to make a hinge pin from scrap. A couple of applications of superglue saw this project finish. The final touch of display was to add a quality reproduction box from DRRB. Well, that's it once again. I hope you liked this video. Please feel free to comment and subscribe. There will be more videos to come, so thanks for watching.